Generally, when you see two men in uniform come into your business, it's never good news, right? But today it's good news because we're going to learn a lot of important things from the two gentlemen who did come in uniform. I'm Randall Carlisle. Welcome to another edition of Odyssey House Journals. And I'm really happy to have our two guests here, Chief Matt Dumont and Lieutenant Kevin Hunter from the Salt Lake County Sheriff's Department. Welcome, guys. You didn't come to arrest me or anything?
No, not this time. Not this time, Randall.
I have met you many times before, but I've not been able to be a guest in your jail. So I'm planning to stay that way.
Right? Well, just make sure you come through the front door, not the back.
There you go. The reason this is one of the most watched and listened to podcasts dealing with addiction and recovery, and unfortunately, very frequently, the issue of addiction intersects with what you guys do in terms of law enforcement, and that's what we want to talk about. And Chief Dumont is in charge of the Salt Lake County Jail, and so you see a lot of people that we see as well.
I think we share a clientele.
Yes, we do share. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah. There's a program that Odyssey House operates in your jail called CATS, and you've been there for years, and I see you before the CATS program puts on a Christmas play every year. And I see you speak to the judges and lawyers and people from Odyssey House about it every year. And it's about how the program works and how it works so well. Could you sort of elaborate on that?
Sure. And it was, the CATS program, it was actually a program that started in 1999. At the time, it was operated by Valley Behavioral,
right.
Valley Mental Health at the time, now Valley Behavioral Health. In 2015, the operation of the CATS program changed to Odyssey House, and it's been a great partnership. Valley was a great partner, but that great partnership right. and that great program has continued since then. So the CATS program is a 90-day therapeutic community program that's held in the jail. We've had thousands of people go through the program now, and I actually did my master's thesis on outcomes of the CATS program.
Really?
Back in the early 2000s.
And for people who don't realize, people come in to the jail suffering from substance use disorder, and they have a choice if it's a sentence of 3 months or longer to go through the CATS program, right?
Definitely.
And they're in their own pods, living with other inmates who are going through the same thing. Does it work?
It certainly can. We estimate that between 70 and 85% of the people who are booked into our jail, and there are about 30,000 or so people booked into the Salt Lake County Jail every year, between 70 and 85% have some sort of substance use disorder.
Really?
That is depending on which statistic you look at.
That's huge.
It is huge. 7 out of 10 to 8 out of 10 people who come through our front doors or our back doors have a substance use disorder, and so it's been an important part of our overall population. We have typically about 100, we have the opportunity for 180 or so people, so about just under 10% of our population to participate in the CATS program. We have 120 beds that are specifically focused on males. We have another 32 beds that are dedicated towards our female population. And then we have another housing unit that's set aside to offer sort of pre and post program housing for folks who are either entering into CATS or recently completed.
And you did your paper on it as well, but you have what are the latest numbers in terms of the program working or not working?
Well,
when we talk about recidivism, people coming back through the back door frequently.
Yeah. Well, what we've seen is that the people who participate in the program, who complete the CATS program while they're incarcerated and then continue treatment once they are released, the numbers are so much better than they were for people who just complete the program or who don't participate at all. And so for the people who, and I think this is something that we hear throughout, I know over the years I've heard a number of times, treatment doesn't stop. There's not a program, right? Once you're in recovery, you're in recovery for life, right?
Right.
And so the people who participate in the program while they're incarcerated, and there's always, I think, a lot of motivation to get involved while you're incarcerated. It's you're of a clear mind. You don't have some of those other distractions that are coming in at you. It's a little bit tougher when you get out into the world and get released, and you have some more of those other, some more stressors and other distractions.
And the difference is, even if it's the Odyssey program, in jail or out of jail, they can walk out of our program anytime when they're in our program out of jail, but they can't in jail.
Yeah.
So,
And so for the people who do continue their treatment, we see almost a reciprocal relationship with recidivism. So we over the years, we see about 7 out of 10 people are reincarcerated within 1 year of a release from jail. For the people who continue their treatment once they get released, who have completed CATS, it goes down to about 24%. And so,
wow.
So it's almost a reciprocal relationship in terms of continuing treatment.
And 7 out of 10 of the people who come into the Salt Lake County Jail come back.
Generally, they're booked in either on warrants or new charges within a year.
I've interviewed several people who say initially they fought any kind of treatment, and if their sentence is, say, 3 or 4 months, and they have an option of CATS, they say, no, I'd just rather do my sentence and get out of here as opposed to going through CATS.
Yeah, that's always, there's something called responsivity. People have to be ready for treatment if the treatment's going to take effect or if it's going to be more effective. For me, I always stress to the people that I talk to, you can let your time work you, or you can work your time. You can put your time to work for you. And so I think it's better if you could use your time while you're sitting in jail more productively by trying to make some changes in your life.
And Lieutenant, I've seen you involved in this year. Every year, even though that's not your direct jurisdiction, you're there for all the CATS Christmas plays. Why?
I think I really took an interest in this when I was assigned as a deputy in Charlie Pod. I got assigned to the female units quite often, and I really learned to understand and get involved with these prisoners who some were court ordered, and so sometimes there's some challenges when you're just court ordered, and then there's some that are there by choice. And as you start going through that, and you look at some of the habits that you will see with people that they go down, that will make excuses for different things, or they act out because of certain reasons or what their life has been like. And I got to the point where, rather than being very restrictive on these people going through these programs, I found it a lot more fun or more impactful to challenge them to take a step back and look at themselves. And then I would have them write some kind of an essay or something that applies to their situation and why it's important for them to remain in the program rather than utilize a rule violation or something like that might restrict them from the program or remove them. And so when I took that approach, I really had a good response from these prisoners. And I think the respect that they gave me was a little bit different too. And then I noticed they would start calling each other out on things in a way that wasn't negative, but just reminding, hey, these people are here also in this uniform to make sure they're successful. And I think that just really stood out to me. And I love to see the success of these prisoners. I've been doing this Chief Dumont and I went through the academy together 28 years ago. 27 years
You
ago.
guys aren't
May.
that old.
Yeah,
I know.
And we never imagined. I never imagined we'd be sitting with these prisoners and counseling them and talking to them the way that they do, and then getting to know the instructors and really seeing the passion with these instructors. Some of them are recovering addicts as well, who are now in there. And so for me, I love to go every year. I run into some old timers that have been in jail forever since we started, and to see some of the biggest, toughest, burliest dudes that used to just fight us all the time on everything, now performing and coming up and shaking our hands. I mean, thinking about shaking hands of prisoners 27 years ago wasn't really a thing. And now, we go through, we shake their hands and we talk to them, and to connect on that level is actually a really rewarding thing for us in this line of work, to be able to have those types of exchanges with these people. And that's what brings me, back to seeing those and seeing people like you and the staff of Odyssey House that I've become really good friends with.
And I see, people picture you guys as like big, mean guys in a jail and everything. And I see really looks of pride and happiness and satisfaction when I see you guys coming to something like a Christmas play for the CATS program. I mean, you must feel good about that.
Yeah, it's funny. Just before the podcast, we were doing a class with the academy, and one of the questions that came up was, the brand new into the academy, cadets were asking about things. What are you proudest about? What are some things that you've done that make you the proudest? And one of the things that I brought up is you get the chance to really make an impact in someone's life. And there was someone who back in 2007, when I was the program sergeant, there was someone who graduated one of our programs and actually went through CATS down the road, who calls me every year on his date of sobriety and celebrates that just with a phone call, just celebrates it. And sometimes he'll leave me a voicemail. But that's one of those things that really helps us put wind in our sails and makes us appreciate what it is that we do.
And you guys genuinely don't want to see people keep coming back, right?
Unless it's like, to celebrate, something with us.
But
we don't want to see people coming back to jail. We want them to get out and stay out. Focus on. I always tell people, don't focus on getting out of jail. Focus on staying out of jail.
Right.
If I know when some folks are sort of weighing out that decision to participate in CATS, if they're, they look at the time, the time commitment that it takes, because it is a 90-day program.
Sure.
And say, well, it could be 90 days and better arm you with tools that'll keep you out of jail, or get out tomorrow and we'll see you next week.
Yeah. And when you talk about time, we go through the same situation when people are considering coming into the Odyssey House program outside of jail. And you're looking at 3 to 5 to 6 to 7 months. Mm-hmm. And people say, oh, I can't do that. That's too long. And then you say, well, how long have you been a heroin addict? And that's from 12 years. And you say, so you couldn't spend 3 to 5 months to turn that around and lead a productive life, and it's strange sometimes to hear people balk at that,
And I think that when I was talking about some of the outcomes, when our average length of stay in the Salt Lake County Jail is about 24 days. And so it's almost like the door creaks open just a little bit, and we have to do our best. When I say we, it's our correction staff, our program staff, our partners. We've got to take that opportunity to get that door wide open so that someone can be open. And what we try to do is, at least in 24 days, if someone comes into jail and they've had a drug habit for years, we've got no illusions that in 24 days, that person's going to walk out.
Yeah.
But what we do try to do is get people introduced to what resources are out there, let them know that there are resources that they can rely on and go to when they get out of jail.
And I've got to compliment you guys for letting our outreach teams come into the jail from Odyssey and I guess other programs and just talk to people. We call it the DOGS program. I guess it just talk to inmates if they want to about what's possible.
Yeah.
You know.
That's something that I really have to give the behavioral health community is its ability to develop acronyms. So CATS is the correctional addiction treatment services,
Right.
and then DOGS, of course, is the drug offender group services.
Yes.
And so they're both addressing different levels of need, and that's something that I think the behavioral health community should really pride itself on.
Cats and dogs.
Cats and dogs. Yeah.
Let's switch gears for a minute. I want to talk about the fact that I've seen many news stories about it on TV and in newspapers and everything. You guys are citizens who live their lives just like everyone else. And when we're talking about either officers or emergency responders, you're also dealing with people who could become alcoholics, drug addicts, things like that. How do you work you work with them a lot with what do you call it,
Peer support.
it's peer support. So when you run into a situation like that, I would guess that somebody maybe in your profession is more reluctant to admit that they're going through a problem or they're facing a problem than maybe some average people in society. Is that true?
It is, and what's interesting is some of the stigmas that surround some of these people just that come into our facilities of not getting help. We run into the same type of stigmas of what will people think if I'm just struggling with alcohol, just something like that, or depression or something like that. We run into some of the similar stigmas where we're afraid to admit to our friends, our families, our coworkers that we're struggling and we're feeling a certain way about an incident or a lot of incidents, because some of our people get exposed to some of the most with some very scary and difficult situations. You sure the guys that work on the streets experience different things, but even in the jail, we see and deal with some pretty rough situations.
Tons of trauma.
Yes,
right?
trauma. And
Yeah.
when you look at the community that comes in that's addicted to substances, they've dealt with certain traumas. Well, we do. We live in the same community, and we're human beings just like everybody else. And sometimes we carry past trauma into the job, or we have the current stuff that happens. And it seems like over a period of time, sometimes those things can really affect our people. And coping mechanisms for us, we struggle with the same type of things as the general public.
Sure.
And so we either find healthy ways to cope or unhealthy ways to cope. And our job with peer support and the program that we have for peer support is to intercede before it becomes big. And one of the biggest things is pay attention after critical incidents. And there's a lot of information out there, and there's a very specific book out there that I get a lot of this information from, and it's Mindfulness for Warriors. And the author who wrote this, she lost her husband to suicide. And he had done years in the military, years in law enforcement, and one day on actual Thanksgiving, he completed suicide just down the road from their home. And as she talked about being grateful when she found out that an off-duty first responder discovered her husband, not like a general citizen, she was grateful that somebody didn't have to deal or be exposed to that trauma. And then through her research, she found out and learned that when we see these things, we see things we're not programmed to understand. And so she actually dials back and talks about how, we've got to really get in early when we have somebody who discovers something like this or sees some of the horrific things that we see. Because when you go down those unhealthy coping things, that you turn to alcohol or things just to shut it off, just like the general public when they deal with childhood trauma or current trauma, they take a substance to shut it off. And our job with peer support is to intervene and hopefully with what we've put forward with our program is people see the early stages and recognize those. Because family members of addicted people that come into jail, they see it and they're afraid to say something. They're afraid to upset. And sometimes we have that stigma around us. And the more education we get, we understand that more. And we're human beings just like the people
That's what people
we
need to
incarcerate.
understand. Yeah.
We are. And we suffer traumas. We see things and we experience things that are very difficult for us to experience. And I've even seen in some of these classes, like we have a life skills program as well, and we have deputies who teach classes to these people in this life skills class, and they'll share their personal stories about turning to alcohol and having somebody that has stepped in and say, hey, and helped them out and stuff. And when we can share and connect in those ways, when we're dealing even with an offender or a prisoner that is in a crisis, I've even used personal experience when I've been working with a prisoner that's in crisis to help them understand what they're about to do or what they're thinking of doing will have an impact on me. I've flat out said, and I've heard the chief say, if you do that, that will affect me. And so,
Sure.
we're not different from the general public. We see things and experience things that are hard to deal with, and stigmas are alive and well with us too. And if we don't address them and get really involved quickly, you can turn to things that are unhealthy. And you see every year the news will report on post decertifying people for alcohol-related things, DUIs, drugs, you name it. And if you trace it back, some of these are stemming from trauma that we see on the job.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say one of the areas where I think law enforcement, I think not just law enforcement, but the military, fire service, and the legislature is really taken this at the forefront to try to help our first responders and our public safety professionals in addressing some of these wellness issues and the helping not only the first responders but their families, people who dedicated their careers to this line of work and have retired. They've really opened up the availability of services for people who are involved in public safety. And so my hats are off to the legislature. There's some funding and things like that that open these services up to people who serve their communities.
Well, I think society now is beginning to realize that you guys are all just like us.
We're people too.
Yeah, exactly. Is it harder for a law enforcement officer who identifies that he or she has a problem to get into some kind of program? I mean, I can use myself as an example. I was a TV anchorman for decades, and I was a functional alcoholic for decades, and I was embarrassed to admit that I was. And when I went to an IOP program at uni, it's like everybody's in the group is saying that's a TV anchor guy.
Right.
And I'm sure law enforcement officers must be concerned about the same thing.
Yeah, I have a friend of mine that did an inpatient alcohol substance abuse program, and when I spoke to this individual, they shared with me how difficult it was for them to really get into the group. Because to succeed in one of those groups, you have to be part of that group. You have to be accepted in that group.
You have to be honest. You have
exactly.
to,
And they shared with me that there were whisperings of they were undercover and they were there to look at someone in the group, and it really affected their treatment and almost bailed out of the treatment. And sometimes by the time we get to treatment, as first responders, specifically in law enforcement, it's because someone has noticed a problem, or we've self-reported a problem, or maybe something happened because of my alcohol problem, and it's part of, hey, we need to get you back on track, and we need to get you some help, because we're all about helping our people when we can early intervene with these types of things, and they haven't taken a step past a law or something like that. And so when they're in these groups, and this very specific individual was like, I was ready to be done,
Sure.
and just slowly worked their way in the group and ended up being the lead of their group by the end of the program, and that's why they were successful in it. And so there's stigmas even within that type of stuff. And when we walk into a program or walk into a building to get help, and we're surrounded by the people that might have been in the housing unit that we were assigned 3 months ago,
Yeah.
could be very difficult. And so when we look at those types of treatment centers, there's a lot of talk out there that it might be time to even look at some very specific treatment centers for first responders, so we can remove that embarrassment to go and be around people that are out of jail now and they're in the community now,
right,
and stuff, but to really lead them to the treatment they need and get that treatment that would be awesome for them. And I hope to see that one day before the end of my time doing this, that we see some things where we can look at some first responders, and that's all the way across the board, where they can go somewhere that they're not worried about the stigmas
Right.
of what's the whisperings are, to get the true treatment and really succeed and come out on the other side a better person.
And selfishly, for you guys, it makes sense to intervene with people who are initially experiencing problems, because you always have a shortage of people, right?
Yeah.
And you want to keep somebody, if they're a 10, 20-year veteran, you want to keep them around, right?
Yeah, but I think even bigger than that is a lot of times it's the experiences that our people see on the job. And what we don't want to have that do. This is a great career. It's something that, it's taken care of me and my family for the last 27 years. But we all, we also put in a lot of time and effort and tears and sleepless nights and things like that.
Sure.
Is part of the career. And it does pay, you do pay a toll to participate in this career. And if we have somebody who is given their in some ways their well-being to this career, then I don't want us to leave them high and dry if they're struggling with something. Right. I want to make sure that
we have about a minute left. How do you guys want the public to perceive you guys? I've always wondered about that. And I'll ask each of you. I mean, how do you want to be perceived?
We're people. We're people. We're part of the community. When I'm not at work, I'm either at a horse show with my daughter or a football game with my son, or out to dinner with my wife. We're just people who are part of the community. We have a lot of the same struggles that everyone has. Paying bills and finding enough time, or challenging family members, things like that.
Sure.
We face a lot of the same challenges that everybody faces. That's how I'd like to.
Kevin, what do you?
Well, I think a lot of the community don't realize when I started this career and working as a line deputy, I chose a career where I walk into a room with up to 80 prisoners that aren't behind bars. We let them out.
Right.
I'm spending the day with them. I'm sitting and talking to them. I'm learning about their families. I'm holding them accountable when they're, there's safety violations and stuff like that. And whatnot, but we're taking care of their family members. And one of the things that I love about my current job as the training coordinator is I impress upon these guys. They're humans. And it's someone's mother, it's someone's father, a sibling.
Sure.
It's a family member in there. And if you treat them like that, generally, the high percentage will respond in kind, because they're being treated like a human being. And that's extremely important. Because I want to go home to my family. I love my wife. I have an amazing wife and my son, my stepkids. I want to go home to them, and they deserve for me to be good as well, and to be mentally well, even with the things that I see with this job.
I'm glad you guys are human.
We are. Well, and I think that message from the leadership down, Sheriff Rivera insists that we lead with humanity and that we treat people with dignity and respect.
And she treats people like that too.
100% of it.
You guys do a great job. We appreciate our interconnection with you guys, Odyssey House, and I appreciate you guys coming down and sharing a half hour of your time and knowledge. So thank you.
It's been our pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed it as well, either watching it on YouTube or listening on any of the podcast platforms. So thank you for watching another edition of Odyssey House Journals.